I'd like to welcome everyone here, our distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and participants. I am Bhavya Singh, a member of the India AI mission team at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and it is my honor to welcome you all to the session on sustainable agriculture. I'd like to invite all speakers, case study presenters on stage to please settle down. A round of applause, please. While we settle, I'd just like to introduce the context behind this session by introducing the Global Partnership on AI. Launched in June 2020, the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, or GPAI as it's more popularly known, is an international multi-stakeholder initiative aiming to bring countries and experts together to support and guide the responsible development and use of AI grounded in human rights, inclusion, diversity, innovation, and economic growth, while seeking to contribute concretely to the 2030 Agenda and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. India is a founding member and the current lead chair of GPAI for 2024. And as the lead chair, India proposed sustainable agriculture as a thematic area for the 2025 GPAI work plan. This was approved and promoted by fellow GPAI member states during the 2023 New Delhi Summit through its inclusion in the Ministerial Declaration. This session seeks to build upon the success of the summit and the GPAI virtual convening earlier this year that included critical discourse on the subdomains of crop advisory, market access, and climate-resilient agriculture. Before we begin, I'd like to invite all our speakers, panelists to stand up for a group photograph to capture this momentous occasion. Thank you so much. Moving on, we will have two virtual keynote addresses for this session. First off, we have Mr. Rajiv Chawla, who's the Chief Knowledge Officer and Advisor at the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Rajiv Chawla is an IAS officer of the 1987 Karnataka cadre and a senior fellow at Niti Aayog. He's led groundbreaking projects like Bhumi for digital land records and more popularly AgriStack for agricultural efficiency. His accolades include the Prime Minister's Awards for Excellence in Civil Service and the UN Public Service Award and Forbes recognition.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am happy to participate in this conference, although remotely. I thought that on this occasion, we should discuss a little about what is happening on this national project on agriculture, digital agriculture, called AgriStack. This project, which is on for last about 2.5 years, is a data project. It consists of various databases and registries, as I would explain, of course, based on data standards, which is very important, and then policies on this data sharing, the regulations, and the APIs. So this AgriStack project, basically, a given person is a farmer. What are his or her lands? Where are the lands located? That means the coordinates of those lands shown in the current season. Now, this would apply to about 15 crore farmers who are land-owning farmers, about 5 crore landless owners who may be the cultivators, the sharecroppers, etc. About 2 crore farmers who would be purely animal husbandry farmers, milch cattle, and then of course 3 crore farmers who may be practicing fisheries. As far as the crop details are concerned, there would be approximately 30 crore parcels, which will belong to the category which I have listed on the left. So this is the size of the work which is intended to be done. Next slide, please. Now, when in a full-blown AgriStack, this lady called Neelam, who happens to be a farmer and owns land, her lands would be, so this is like a golden record of that Neelam. You can see her demographic details. You can see her lands on the right-hand side. The lands come from the land registry, the land record system, and dynamically gets changed into the farmer registry as and when mutations happen. Of course, each of these land locations would be known through the geo-reference digitized cadastral maps, about 7 lakhs in number. We have 7 lakh villages in the country. The crop details, which will be carried out by the crop survey, would be carried out during every season by about 6.5 lakh crop surveyors who may be either government servants or Krishi Sakhis or rural development officials or even private local youths from the village who will be engaged for this work. You will also have soil health details of each parcel of land, and then of course the benefits which are taken by Neelam and others. This would be basically the golden record. Next slide, please. All this data which is available or which would be available in AgriStack would then be made available to all the players, including private sector, of course, government sectors, government, state government, central government, through the API layer called UFSI, Unified Farmer Service Interface. And there would be a strong consent layer because the data, the land, the crop, and the personal details are considered by us as personal data of the farmer. There would be a very strong, there is a very strong AgriStack consent manager called ACM, which works in a typical way. And any land data which would be shared to any player, including government scheme, unless exempted under the Data Protection Act, would be shared only with the explicit consent of the farmer. Seen in this sense, AgriStack is Aadhaar plus for the agriculture ecosystem, whereas Aadhaar only gives you the KYC detail. As I told you, here you have the land, the crop, and the demographic details. And like Aadhaar API, you have UFSI API, and then you have a regulator, which is planned to be put in the way so that when the private sector consumes these services, or for that matter, government sector, and if any harm is caused to farmer, or if there is any grievance from the farmer, the regulator can control and regulate the sector, regulate those harms, etc. There are lots of supporting registries, about 25 of them, which are being built in a federated manner. So you have a crop master, you have seed master, etc. Similarly, you have the banks master, you have the scale of finance. These are fertilizers, pesticides, which are required for the AgriStack to work in a more effective manner. There would also be a data exchange, which can be more than one, but to start with, AgriStack has worked with Ministry of IT, METI, and the data exchange built by them is being used as a data exchange. The purpose of data exchange is that while the government AgriStack would provide only the crop, the farmer's ownership details, the cattle details, and the crops, the data exchange would ensure that various private sector players who have the data and which are required for any use case to complete can onboard onto this data exchange so that the data seeker, the non-personal data seekers, to complete a use case, apart from getting a personal data from AgriStack, can get non-personal data from the data exchange by, of course, paying if so required. Things like satellite data, things like weather conditions, etc., would come from this data exchange. There is no hard and fast rule. There can be multiple data exchanges if so required. How will the farmer benefit from AgriStack? The various schemes of the government are now being linked to AgriStack, and this means that farmers would no more be required to give their land, crop, and personal details by submitting documents, a farmer ID would ensure that the farmer can just authenticate and give his farmer ID, and as soon as he gives consent, the whole personal details are populated, which would result in KCC loan in less than about 30 minutes. In fact, it takes about 15 minutes as on today, as it is being piloted. The Kisan Credit Card loan through the Jan Samarth platform of Department of Financial Services is used by various bankers to provide Kisan Credit Card loans. The MSP, etc., the crop insurance, all would happen very quickly with the help of AgriStack, because that is the required data. Even the NDRF, SDRF benefits, whenever there is any drought or flood, would be immediately released using AgriStack without seeking any application from the farmer. In fact, during the current year, Karnataka distributed DBT money to about 75 lakh farmers without any application from them, because they knew from the AgriStack farmers registry whether he is a smaller marginal farmer. The crop details were known, the damaged crop details government knew, and therefore the payment was just pushed to their electronic system without any application. It would also be possible for a suo motu inclusion under the PM Kisan. There would be no need of application. And then, of course, advisory, which would come primarily from private sector, but also from government sector. And today, I think in the discussion, the advisory is being discussed. The required personal data and the land data crop details will come from the AgriStack. Next slide. The AgriStack would also help government in a very big scale. There would be about 5,000 crore saving under PM Kisan, debt farmers, farmers who are not having land, who have transacted the land, would be automatically removed. Of course, on a suo motu basis, they would be included also. No more misuse of MSP or PSS by unscrupulous people by faking others' land. No drudgery required, reduction in drudgery for government officials to check the authenticity of the document will all be avoided, and most importantly, accurate crop production details estimates could help the timely decision on import and export, because you will now know on each of those 30 crore plots what is grown, and you will be able to have aggregated data, disaggregated data at a village level, tehsil level, district level. Next slide, please. Just to give you an example of how a typical use case would happen, a very powerful case, I would like that you explore this case further and see whether how private loan systems can imitate, check, copy this. Farmer would apply on a mobile app of Jan Samarth, would do a eKYC. As soon as he goes eKYC, the standard digital form across 9 banks, major banks, would be digitally filled. The data would come from AgriStack with the consent of the bank, with the consent of the farmer. The data would be checked, the application would be approved using the business rule engine, which would be a part of Jan Samarth, without any bank official taking any decision. And as soon as it is signed, there would be a digital agreement using the Aadhaar-based signatures and the PKI-based signatures of the banker. Again, no digital intervention, and the money gets released. The details also goes to Government of India for interest subvention. Everything happens electronically, and in fact, after the crop has been sown, loan taken, the AgriStack will help bankers to find out whether the farmer had indeed grown the crop for which he had applied for. Jan Samarth acts as a switch. That means farmer would switch, as in NPCI, like NPCI. Farmer would have complete freedom to apply use any of the front-end applications, which would all connect to the GenSummer switch. So you can apply from the GenSummer application, which would be like a Beam application, or you can, which is like a reference application, or you can apply from any of the bank's application, bank's front end, from all the banks, and the farmer can choose whichever offer is best for him and would get the loan from GenSummer. The data only comes from the agri-stack, the crop, the personal details, and his land details. There is a huge role of private sector for advisory, credit, sale of input and purchase, which you are discussing today. And of course, for this purpose, they would need to develop their digital solutions for those use cases and publish their data on data exchange in case it has to be consumed by others. Any private sector can participate only after the regulator clears and impanels, checks the system in the sandbox. And of course, for private sector to participate, the government will have to decide when they want to open agri-stack for private use cases. Next slide, please. Finally, while agri-stack is use case agnostic. It only provides data, just like Aadhaar. And it is for the other use cases to piggyback on agri-stack and then consume the data and then provide use cases delivery. Approximately right now, 5 crore plots are being surveyed now. They will increase to 30 crore in next 1.5 to 2 years when all the states participate in the program. And these plots, along with their geo coordinates and photos, would be available for the private sector to then use for as a training set for crop signature, because you will now know the coordinates, the photo and the crop name. You can use this to train your tools for the satellite data, and then which would result in future in more accurate finding out of which crop is grown when you look at the satellite data. There is a very important component of data standards. While the agri-stack is working on, as a government right now, on data standardization in case of land, the crop, and the farmer's demographic details under the MDDS initiative of Ministry of IT. There would be many other data sets on which data standardization would be required, and government would be working with the private sector, with the universities, with other national and international bodies to come up on data standards for all type of use cases in coming days. So this is all I wanted to tell you. Thanks a lot for giving time for explaining agri-stack. Thank you.
A round of applause, please. Thank you so much, Shri Rajiv Chawla, for making your presence felt, even though you couldn't join us in person. Next up, before we kick off the case study and the panel discussion, we have a special recorded video expert keynote address from Ms. Inma Martinez, who is the chair of the multi-stakeholder experts group at the Global Partnership of AI, and also a digital pioneer and AI scientist and director of MSc in AI at the School of Engineering in Loyola University. Can we have the message from Ms. Inma Martinez?
Thank you so much for inviting me and GPAI to present at this panel on sustainability in agriculture. My name is Inma Martinez, and together with Professor Daniela Russ of MIT, we are the co-leads of the GPAI project, Introduction of AI in Agriculture and Livestock Farming. In November 2021, GPAI's Executive Council approved the proposal of its Innovation and Commercialization Working Group to create a dedicated project that would demonstrate the significant traction and transformation that artificial intelligence has created in agricultural practices around the globe, not just in developed countries, but for specific crops and for cooperative farming environments, especially in countries in development, where the most vulnerable population, oftentimes women and children, tend to the land and the animals trying to make a living. The technification of agriculture has emerged, pushed by the urgency of solving pressing challenges that force the farming communities to respond to global demand, climate change, reversals of human eating habits, food safety, and the urgent need to preserve natural resources in agricultural practices. Furthermore, the need to datify agricultural sectors is now a top priority for both food exporters and food buyers, because agricultural data governance is a first pillar of infrastructure in the roadmap of AI and other data gathering technologies used in agriculture. AI's superpower is optimization. AI has managed to deliver specific valuable insights to farmers that now allow them to yield more from arable land, but to do it in sustainable ways, contributing to create a new agricultural landscape in which farming communities are able to produce higher quality of produce, look after their animals in improved and more humane ways, and to look after the biological needs of both lands and bioecosystems that coexist and are interdependent in arable lands, the oceans, and the green feeding pastures. In the last 2 years of gathering case studies, we have seen how satellite data helps farmers identify the dry patches in their fields far better and more affordable than using drones, which require drone pilots and for insurance reasons prevent farmers to pilot them in many countries. Using water, irrigation and pesticides in controlled quantities has created the new precision agriculture. And AI modeling has allowed farmers to learn the ripeness processes of their perishable crops, allowing them to deliver to food markets a fresh produce in optimal quality. Animals are monitored in pasture lands via GPAI's geofencing, allowing them to feed and to move in liberty. GPAI sees 3 particular aspects of AI transformation and optimization of agriculture that have a direct effect on the global efforts for sustainability. And the first one is agricultural data governance as a requirement for all agricultural nations to build in order to optimize the human food chain and predict farming resources, potential famines, and the historical yields of land and farmed animals. Agricultural data is fundamentally real-world evidence data that must be governed within regulatory frameworks so that all nations can cooperate in sustaining agriculture within the UN sustainability principles. And GPAI has already opened up a dedicated research track for this endeavor, and we look forward to collaborating with all international organizations interested in this aspect of data analysis and governance. The second aspect is that AI and other technologies are opening up job opportunities in agricultural regions to new generations of technologists, data scientists, and AI modelers. This is creating a negative net migration in rural areas previously affected by young population leaving for city jobs. Returning to agricultural lands and creating new GDP and regenerating the population is vital for all nations. But what about developing countries where women and children perform agricultural arduous tasks? Who will protect them from men taking over these jobs once AI and technology make farming more attractive? We are highlighting this social issue, which goes beyond technology and needs direct government attention. We do not want women displaced from agriculture when it finally becomes a decent way to earn a living. And the third aspect has to do with agricultural practices being affected by dietary changes in the world's population, who are beginning to consume higher protein grains. This means that farmers need better data in order to yield to this new requirement, especially when arable land decreases year on year due to climate change. It is also a new opportunity for farming cooperatives to export new grains to countries where the population is shifting towards plant-based diets. Supporting this emerging trend, AI has managed to allow small farming communities to make the shift to ancient grains, specialty crops, and animal produce that comes from better farming environments for animals, which the quality increases and it becomes a factor for purchase for many consumers. It is a gap in the market that will allow small farmers to earn a better living and get out of dire poverty. And to this end, GPAI is working towards creating a repository of AI practices towards higher yielding crops. And again, we hope to be supported by the collaboration of other bodies. I have worked as an AI scientist in agriculture across several countries and practices, and I have witnessed the beneficial transformation for both farmers and the land. The themes of this panel are incredibly important to support, and GPAI looks forward to the global efforts that we can put all of us together towards the development of sustainable agriculture practices, thanks to AI and other technologies. Thank you very much.
We thank Ms. Inma Martinez for again making her presence felt virtually. Moving on, the next part of the session involves the presentation of 3 case studies from AI practitioners working in the subdomains of agriculture, in the subdomains that were previously identified in the GPAI virtual convening. These 3 subdomains are those of market access and financial services for farmers, climate resilient agriculture, and the third one being crop advisory. The first presenter for today is Mr. Sanjay Uppal, who is the founder and CEO of Finbots AI, who will be making his case study presentation on scaling agri-finance responsibly with AI credit scoring. I invite Mr. Sanjay Uppal to take the stage. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here and delighted to share with you a case study that we have and also give you a broader perspective of what we're doing with financial institutions that are looking to work closely with communities, including these small, medium businesses, consumer borrowers, and obviously within the ambit is also agri-finance. So I'm founder and CEO of Finbots AI. We are a Singapore-based fintech, and we started this journey in November 2017. So what we're going to share with you is capabilities that have been developed over extensive R&D over the last 6+ years. So if you look at the market, one of the things I always notice, when you go for events like this, and I always say this, which was that one part of the entire event that attracted the most crowd? It's the mealtime. So when you talk about agriculture, it's the food. The population continues to grow. We're looking at numbers between 9 to 10 billion by year 2050. What it really means is agricultural productivity has to go up by 70%. On the other side, it continues to have a pretty dominant effect. So globally, agriculture is about 4% of the GDP. In India, it's about 15% today. But if you look at a lot of other developing countries, some of them, the numbers are going up above 25% of the GDP. So a significant portion of their economic environment. Globally, the estimates are there are about 600 million farmers, and they roughly own about 1/3 of the total crop production, the food supply, and about 1/4 of the entire agriculture area. Coming to the agriculture value chain, and in terms of the financing, essentially, and these are global numbers, the financing gap across the entire chain, whether it is farmer credit, supply chain finance, which is post the farmer stage, or consumer finance, you're looking at only 1/3 of the requirement is being met today. 2/3 of financing requirements are still not being met. And this is a kind of a proportion that hasn't moved much over the years. So what are the challenges lenders face today? So when we talk to lenders, one of the things that they say is, look, this is a high-risk segment. They don't have enough data to work with. Their credit models are not that great. They do face NPLs, non-performing loans. Legacy data, low accuracy of the credit models, as I mentioned. And then another factor is the transaction cost. The way the information is collected, the way it is approved, the way the costs are also incurred at the farmer end, the entire transaction cost of making that loan sometimes makes that loan exercise unfeasible. When you talk about the borrowers, they typically see lower approval rates. Money lenders, which is the informal borrowing many of them tend to do, tends to be very expensive. I've taken an average number of 20 to 50%. I've heard numbers going up to annualized rates of 200% plus. No formal credit history. Again, the data records are missing. And obviously, in a whole host of cases, there's a lack of collateral. Even if there's a collateral, there are very often legal limitations around whether that collateral value can be realized in the case of default. Let's bring it in the context of India. You're looking at 15% of the GDP, about 150 million farmers. Mr. Chawla just shared numbers, including some of the other sectors. We're looking at a market of potential need for $600 billion of finance, out of which today what is being met is essentially about, again, 1/3. So the proportion here is not different to the global 1/3 that we looked at. So today, the institutional finance is about 37%. 16% is coming through informal finance, which is the money lenders, family, friends, etc., that are being used to access. And then nearly half of the farmers today have no access to finance. Today we have clients across 13 countries. That includes NBFCs, banks, etc., lending across various sectors. And Southeast Asia, Africa, where we are, obviously this is a significant part of the target lending. In India, we're really pleased. Avais, one of my partners at the panel here, is from Samanati. It's the largest agri-enterprise in India. We work with them. They're using our product to essentially develop credit models to be able to scale up their business, lend confidently, and obviously make finance accessible to a much wider pool of agri community in India. The mission of Samanati is really clear, unlocking the $1 trillion plus potential of India agriculture. And we're really delighted to be a partner in this journey. So just to give you a sense of scale, they've powered over $3 billion of gross transaction values today in India. They've got access to 6,500 farmer collectives, 8 million farmers, 300, 500 AEs or agri-enterprises across 28 states. So, and they bring a very holistic approach to how they work with this agri-sector today. The requirements that they had essentially were, look, we need to enhance the accuracy of our scorecards. We need to be able to develop these new credit models, update them quickly, but at the same time ensure that the approval process is streamlined, so obviously the ability to do more efficiently and scale it up. Faster assessment of new loans, but also as further drawdowns happen. And then obviously reduce the cost of transaction, and that's very often a bottleneck, because the size of the loan that you put as a minimum threshold is often defined by the cost of transaction, because beyond a certain level, even if this is going to be a well-performing loan, the cost of transaction pretty much starts eating into the principal itself. The outcomes with CreditX, which is today the world's only credit modeling system, it's an AI-powered system. High approval rates for loans, and when we work with them in the initial pilot, the numbers were very impressive. Reduced credit losses, just in terms of the enhanced and additional level of security or scrutiny that could be added. And then obviously the operational efficiency in terms of the cost of developing credit models, but also the execution of credit decisions. So how our product essentially works is it's enormously provides huge automation. It's data agnostic, and that's what lends itself to multiple use cases, including agri. And our last couple of days, we've been exploring how do we leverage a lot of the data. And Mr. Chawla in his presentation also talked about a lot of the new data sets that are going to come in. And we're talking about bringing all that data to enhance the quality of credit decisioning. We're talking about improved accuracy, reduced loss rates, operating efficiency goes up phenomenally, and obviously, the time advantage. Just a quick snapshot. So we today are essentially in Southeast Asia, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa. So my classic case, and this is something that's going live as we speak, is the largest bank in Myanmar, who lends to consumers, but also to, down the entire agri chain, in the SME chain, etc. They're talking about, can we feasibly loan out amounts as small as $10 US. So you're talking about 800 rupees equivalent or even lesser. And that's a great test to what we're trying to do. And why is it $10? It's essentially that vegetable seller who's buying a basket of vegetables in the morning, selling it, and then returning the principal and interest, and keeping the rest of the profit end of the day. And that's a huge market, especially in the rural areas in that country. So, one of the things is, when we talk about this, how do we collaborate? How do we bring different data sources together? And I think working with Samarati, this was a great experience because they obviously have the entire loan performance history. But the second thing was, for some of the enterprises that are borrowing from them, there's data with CRIF, right? That's the credit bureau data. The other thing is, we also brought in a data aggregator, Pro42, who brought in, I think on an aggregate basis, more than 900 variables of data. And all that is seamlessly connected and being leveraged to create credit scorecards and the decisioning process. But this is not where I think we'll stop, and this is where it connects with the presentation you saw earlier. This is the current data that you see on the left, right? What we talked about. But the key thing is where you start sensitizing this data to the real underground economic activity that's happening at each of those farms. The agronomic data, the remote sensing data, and we'll hear more about it shortly, the market data, the price trends, et cetera. And some of the limitations we even have with the historical data that you see on the left will be more than addressed with the data on the right. We've seen that happen really well with some of the other use cases, where the underlying economic elements of the business are proving to be really great insight and credit decisioning. So as we look forward, I think we are really optimistic about what's happening in the agri space here, the plans and some of the actions that are already afoot, and quite excited about the potential of what the entire agri industry in India can look like. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Uppal, and thank you also for keeping time very well. Next up, we have Mr. Praveen Pankaj, who is the Vice President of Data Science and AI at Cropin. Praveen also is a committee member of the Harvard Data Science Initiative and holds a PhD from INRIA, which also happens to be a GPAI expert support center. We welcome Mr. Praveen Pankaj and his presentation on climate resilient agriculture.
First of all, really a pleasure and honor to be here. And thanks so much for the organizers and for the invitation, and also respected fellow panel members and moderators, and also my dear friends from the audience. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, the last day of the session and almost the last session. So I'll be really quick. So we talked, in the keynote address, we talked some important points of strategy. We talked a little bit about where the revenue will come from. So now I'll talk a little bit about how we do it also, since that's an important part. Agriculture is something which is, I feel, very close to and passionate about. So I lead the Cropin AI lab. And I want to talk a little bit about the one case study that which we did in sub-Saharan Africa and also in India, and mostly looking at it from a geospatial angle. Okay, so a little bit about Cropin. We are a decade-old startup, and we've gone through multiple phases of transformation. So we started with a very simple idea of just digitizing farmlands, which means just drawing the geospatial boundary and taking some very basic samples from the farmers. And then we started bringing in some geospatial insights, climate and weather data and things like that. And then we started looking at how to expand it, and I'll talk a little bit about not only starting with India, but also growing, make in India, but growing globally as well. And then last year we launched the intelligent agri cloud, and also the Cropin AI lab a couple of years back. So that's a little bit of our phase. Mostly like what we have been, and a lot of the work that I'm going to talk about as a scientist, it's important for me to recognize also the people who have been involved. So there's a lot of people who have actually worked on this. So I'll directly jump into this. So when you talk about one of the major challenges that we faced when we are actually talking about agriculture, and if you're looking at it from a satellite imaging perspective, is actually like which part of the land and regions are actually active, right? Like for example, a farmer might decide not to grow a particular crop or not to grow at all and keep our land barren, right? So one of the primary challenges that we faced, looking at it from a remote sensing perspective, is how dynamically the land is being used, you know, and that's a very, very critical, important aspect to be looked at. So we found multiple different data sources, open source data sets, closed data sets, everything. But all of them were static maps, you know. So one of the important things that we build ourselves is dynamically mapping agriculture land. So what you see on the right side, you know, like that corner that you see, is like how the, you know, the signatures, the patterns of the satellite data, the temporal data. When you're looking at satellite imaging, we are not just looking at single image, right? We are looking at temporal data, how it actually changes. So sometimes with the climate change, you know, like even if you talk about a crop calendar as starting date, sowing date, and harvesting date, that whole pattern is changing, right? Like because a farmer might decide to sow later on or early on, depending on the season, right? So static maps are not going to help. So it has to be dynamic, and we build this active learning framework, which is quite adopted to this agriculture use case. So we developed the machine learning model, and since we have been collecting data across different farmlands, so we go and geofence them and across the globe. So we are able to get a variety of data, and then we go back and also like filter them, you know, retrain the model, right? So one of the important element Mr. Chawla was talking about is also on data collection. What I would also add on to it is quality check of data, and also augmenting the data collection process itself through AI, right? So that's something that we have to think about, right? So once the, you know, the land parcels are identified, what's growing, right? Like that means like, is it a cropland or is it grassland and things like shrublands? Now these are difficult problems to solve. We have some publications also around this. Once that is done, then we have to identify what are the crops growing, right? And then it's important to understand the yield, right? So here you can determine the performance of a particular land based on yield or biomass and things like that. So I'll not go into the details of it, but we have also gone to the field and verified it through crop cutting experiments also. You know, so those become our validation set, right? So one of the most important, unlike like I do come from computer vision background, one of the major challenges with respect to collecting of data in agriculture is like, unlike computer vision problems where you can go and annotate, data has to be collected seasonal, you know, and once you miss that, even like, you know, harvesting is already done, then you cannot go back and look at like, you know, what was the crop which was grown, what was the yield and everything, you know. So these are some practical challenges. So timing is really important, right? And once the season is done, then there is no going back, right? Anyway, I'll not go into the details of it, but these are some few pictures. So there's a protocol established, you know, there's a lot of coordination that has to be done. In fact, I would even suggest with field data collection, data scientists to be involved, because once the data comes in, it's important to verify it on a daily basis, you know, so that's been our learning as well. So, you know, like measuring the dry biomass, the wet biomass, wet grain, dry grain, you know, and all of this becomes very, very important, and it has to be quality checked, audited, and constant feedback has to be given. And not only that, once you feed it into the AI system, then go back and correct them, right? Like, so these are very, very important steps, you know. So what will be an AI summit without a little bit of, you know, also some ideas around what are the different models that are being currently used. So this is something that we experimented in our lab, and I want to just give a little bit of flavor also, and you'll understand very shortly why I'm talking about this. So it just, you know, so this is just a food for thought for those who come from AI as well. And my hypothesis and argument is that you know, masked and noisy models, noisy data models can actually become very good feature learners. So we talked about data, but it's also important to get the learning algorithm right also, right? So learning algorithms, for example, current learning algorithms are all supervised, and, you know, in the context of agriculture, it's very difficult to scale that supervised models, because there are a lot of drifts which can happen. So one of the things that we did here is to take some input data, corrupt them, and in fact in satellite data you often find occlusion like with clouds and everything, right? And then try to reconstruct. And not only that, I think the thing that I want to point out here is that after reconstruction they actually become very good learners. So what you see on the right side is non-supervised clustering, but we have also tested out other things as well, which is very interesting also. This uses both radar and optical data, I also want to, give an idea of why it's important to get some good data set. And like, for example, I talked about seasonal variations, right? This is just a, a snapshot of a manifold representation in a different dimension of the satellite data that we collect, knowing what crops are growing here. But you can see, like, for example, there are a lot of drifts here. One of the reasons is if you look at paddy clusters, they're supposed to be clustered together. 3 different paddy clusters are occurring, and the reason is, like the temporal pattern signatures is very different, right? So when you collect data, what I would say, I mean, this is after looking at, sorry, I missed that. This is looking at 114 different countries, 15 million acres, and more than we have 1,000 crops and over 10,000 varieties, 17,000 varieties of crops, right, of crop varieties. So looking at all of that, despite diversity and everything, it's very, very important to understand. And that's why crop calendar and understanding the agroecological zones and everything is very important, right? So despite all of this, like, these challenges, our models do perform well. These are some, like some global figures of yield estimation, error rates that we have had. So sometimes we've had like very good error rates, less than 7%, 5%, like, accuracy rate, it can be above 95%. Some places it's been like, 20%, 30% error rate, where data collection has been a much more issue rather than algorithm, okay? So very quickly on, the application of it, this is in Kenya, the sub-Saharan Africa, which we're looking at, Kenya and Nigeria. I'll talk only about Kenya, but we did for both the wet and the dry season in Nigeria and the long rain and the short rain in Kenya as well. These 2 regions are known for having highly arid regions, so this is how the agroecological zones, they look like from the north, east to southwest, going from arid to humid regions, but I'll not go into the details of it. This is how our, for example, our crop identification looks like, right? So what you see on the left side is 2018 data as against 2023. So this is accumulated. We do it at individual pixel level, but it's aggregated at like a 5 kilometer or 10 kilometer grid, So what you see is those green ones are the major, maize growing regions of Uasin Gishu, Trans-Nzoia and all of that, So this you can actually like map it and find out which are the regions which have high crop acreage. This doesn't mean like you are having high yield, okay? But what we also found is that from 2018 to 2023, there was changes also. For example, this is in Mandara County. In Mandara County, what was happening is that there was migration due to water, and people from Kenya were moving into Ethiopia. So this is actually, you can actually verify it also using the satellite data, right? Not only that, what we also found in Nakuru County, which is supposed to be high yielding region in Kenya, we also saw a drop in the yield, So all this can be attributed to, like loss in rainfall, climate change. And in maize, it's very tricky, 1 to 2 degrees centigrade during a particular phenological stage of the maize crop, you can actually have very high drop in yield, and all of this like correlates very well with the field observations that we see as well. And similarly for Kakamega, for example, we notice that, like there is a temperature. We can look at climate anomalies as well. So we can observe long-term climate as against the instantaneous weather data. And we can see where during the different phenological stages, you are having these kind of temperature anomalies as well, right? I'll just stop with one last slide on India as well, because after all, this is a Global IndiaAI Summit. And, we started with India, and we have also, the earlier case study was, and this is something that we did for the government also. So the same thing that I talked about, the different steps, right? We also did for Malnobis National Crop Forecasting Center for across 5 different seasons in India, across the different districts and everything. So, and we obtained crop maps, we got the ground truth data, the crop cutting experiments, verified them. In some places it works very well, some places it doesn't work very well. Certain crops it works very well, certain crops it doesn't work very well. So there is a lot of learnings from that which we can actually learn and do better implementation strategies. But one important thing which came up is, like, for example, last year, February, we had like a very high temperature, that as the temperature increased, suddenly we also saw yield drops, So it's really possible to make that kind of correlations also at whatever level of resolution that we want to do, One last thing, and before I conclude, sorry about that, but I forgot about this. We did release also recently a language model. This is open source. So this is one of our first contribution to the agriculture community in large. Our open source model is called Akshara. You can go and interact with it on Hugging Face. You can just type on Google Hugging Face Crop in AI Lab Akshara and you will find it. This is also based on responsible AI. It's on climate smart agriculture. So you want any advisories for 9 different crops in the global south, it will actually provide a responsible response to the query that you want to give. So this has been designed with the responsible AI was designed with the help of Google as well. Thank you so much for your patience and also for your attention. And looking forward to more interaction with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And lastly, for crop advisory, we have Mr. Mohammad Salman, who's the Senior Product Manager at Vadvani AI and leads their work on crop advisory. A round of applause, please.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Salman, and as Bhavya said, I lead the agriculture portfolio for products, AI products. I'll keep it short and I'll keep it simple. I'll try to keep it simple. So, so this is a case study that that we are trying. What we tried to do was pest and disease detection using AI modeling through a in-house product, and then the scope of how it can move forward. This is just to give a quick background why we chose this particular problem, as we know that pest attacks are one of the major causes for crop loss, and the most impactful ones from this particular problem are the smallholder farmers. And one of the issues that we have also found while doing the research was there's a lot of pesticide usage onto the field, which also degrades the soil health. So that, with that intention, we chose this particular problem. What we try to do, it's a computer vision problem. So we started in 2020 with a product called Cottonase, and what we try to do is to do early pest warning by detecting what pest is that in that particular image, and accordingly, based on the image and the ETL level, try to generate an advisory around it, so that farmer are able to take those decisions, what is to be followed, how it is to be followed, and so that again, the same problem of optimizing yield. As we know that extension systems are one of the most important pillars for agriculture, and so we did not leave out any other stakeholders. So though it is important for farmers to have this kind of system using AI onto their field, but it is extremely important for the extension officers and district coordinators who are supporting staffs who act as supporting staff for these farmers, because they are ultimately the experts. And I'll tell you why it has been chosen. And of course, the administrator who are at a bigger level for taking decisions. So this is how the system has evolved over time, and this is the final version of the system. Earlier, when we started in 2020, it was a very complex system. It had a lot of protocols in place, which we finally reduced it over time, and that tells us that it is very important to look at the user perspective as well. So, so this is for a simple cotton growing farmer. The trap that he has installed onto the field, he just have to take those pests out from it on a plain surface, just take an image, and that's where the role of AI comes into. It does two things. One, it detects or it identifies what pest is it in that particular image. Second, it counts. The importance of counting over here is that because it is defined by an ETL scientific logic. So economic threshold level helps you define whether what kind of alert category it goes in, whether it's a red alert, green alert, or a yellow alert. And accordingly, based on the alert, the kind of advisory is being suggested. So, so that's the 1 to 4 progression, and the fourth image is basically tells you about the way of giving advisory. As I pointed out, the role of an extension system, this is where the role of an extension system comes in. So as a farmer, for this particular application, if you are a cotton-based farmer, there are two simple criteria for it. One, you have a trap. Second, you have a basic smartphone. If you have these two things, you can be sort of called as a lead farmer. You can do the monitoring of your farm by using this application, but it should not stop there. It should go to the extension worker, and that's where the role of an extension worker happens. So anything that does by lead farmer, suppose there's a red alert that got generated, it gets notified to an extension officer. And now this is the job of an extension officer to go to the lead farmer, check what has happened to his farm, and of course suggest what he can do better. Of course, there's an advisory that has been generated. The farmer can verify that advisory with the extension farmer, but the work for extension worker starts over there. At that time, he can decide whether to disseminate this advisory to the other farmers in that village. And that's where the importance of this kind of system comes in. So it is not only solving the problem of somebody who has a smartphone or who understands the basic tech, but for those farmers as well who are not very digitally literate. Because ultimately it is for the village. If it's happening in your farm, it does not mean that it will not happen in the other farm. It's in the same village. So this is where the power of advisory dissemination comes into, and simple old traditional ways are to be followed: SMS advisory, voice-based advisory, and that voice-based dissemination. It's very simple. This progression basically shows how we grew over the year. We started in 2020 with the experimentation with 800 beneficiaries. It was a COVID year, only started experimenting with it. And gradually, if you look at 2023, we were able to touch upon 116,000 farmers. That shows the trust this sort of system was able to build in the minds of farmer and the sort of community itself. So, so yeah. And the last season, we were able to conduct about 15,000 monitoring sessions. Here, monitoring sessions means the number of alerts and the bifurcations. One thing which I just wanted to highlight over here, the role of a collaboration. It would not have been possible without the support of the network organization. So these are all not-for-profit, farmer benefiting organizations onto a field. They trusted in this particular system and they implemented it. Without having any financial obligations to it. So they felt that this is something which was very important, it would have benefited them, and hence that's what they did. And importantly, to a concentration on the 3 state governments who also felt the need of this and they adopted it, they implemented it. So it shows that if you would want to do something, you can really make that difference. And of course, at one point of time, people or the organization will look at you and try to implement that. This is something very important. So on the left-hand side of yours, you can see that a very simple graph that says that in 2021, we were just solving one pest problem. But in 2024, there's a sudden rise from 2023 to 24 about solving 12 pests. How did that happen? By two major things. One, we open sourced the model. Once we open sourced the model, there was a lot of feedback. There's a lot of, we did ran one kind of competition where people participated, and the kind of results or kind of responses or contribution we got back from the community, especially from the student community, it was immense. We were not able to figure out things which we just able to found out in that 3 months period. So that graph is because of that. Because we were able to templatize the problem. We were able to templatize the technique of how to solve this problem. So if you have the data sets available, we can confidently say that, yeah, we will give you that results within the next 3 months or so. So that's how data helped. And in 2018, we were not having a single data set. A lot of protocols, as I mentioned, is required for data collection. So this system also required the data. Over the period, we collect about 40,000 images, which helped us improve our models. And with the help of that, we were able to do a lot of synthetic data generation. And using such techniques, we were able to actually create or multiply the models. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that the scale. Cotton has to stop somewhere, I would say. It cannot go forever and forever. So what's the sustainability view of it? So the sustainability view of it is that there are models that are readily available, that there are models that can be implemented, integrated into the applications, and that's what we did. Right now, these models are getting integrated into the National Pest Surveillance Systems, which is a Government of India initiative, Ministry of Agriculture initiative. And not only that, it is getting implemented or integrated into some of the state government applications. So they felt that, okay, there is a value in it. So that's the change we want to bring, and that's what we are trying to bring. I'll not go through the story. So this is the story of one of a farmer, Rakesh. But I just wanted to highlight on one important thing which I mentioned in the beginning, the importance of soil health. So this farmer was able to, when we interviewed him, the one thing which got stuck in my head is that he was spraying 5 times the pesticide, but using this application, because it was telling him what is the right quantity he should use it, he was able to spray twice, which basically saves his cost as well. So that's something which was very important. Second important piece was that with the kind of, I would say, the pesticide recommendation he was getting onto the application, he was able to take that to the pesticide seller, so that the pesticide seller could not cheat him by saying that, "Aap ye le lo, you take this." So that's where the importance of this is. And lastly, some of the learnings from this particular story for us was, I'll not talk about the first one, because that's something which we know that there's a lot of complexity that need to be handled at the technological level, not at the user level. I come from product. My focus is always to keep the product simple. Handle their complexity at the technology level, because that's what the role of technology is. We know that there is a lot of, I would say, internet penetration happening, but it is equally important to work on a lot of offline model capabilities. So that's extremely, extremely important. I mean, there will be places where the internet might not be available. And third thing is personalization of recommendation. With such initiatives like these, you will collect a lot of data, a lot of standard structured data. And with support of different informations like historical yield or pest attacks, local weather information, you will be able to create pinpointed advisories, very personalized to that for that farmer. So that's what I think the learnings from this particular project has been for us. And thank you so much for giving time, and looking forward to the session.
Thank you so much. That concludes our case study discussion. And I'd like to now just introduce the panel we have for you. I won't go into long introductions, but we have Mr. Nipun Mehrotra, who is the co-founder and CEO of the Agri Collaboratory, a non-profit which is focused on building agri-DPGs. We have Ms. Sai Gol, who is the co-founder of Bharat Agri. We have Dr. Sudeep Marwa, who's the head of computer applications at the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. We have Ms. Aviera Seet Sundaram, who is the vice president of technology at Samonati.
And we also have joining virtually Dr. Trilochan Mohapatra, who is the former Secretary of the Department of Agricultural Research and Education and the Director General of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. A round of applause for this panel. And you will now see the conversation converging into data sets, DPGs, and national collaboration. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to GPAI for hosting this session. Frankly, agriculture is the biggest use case for AI. Do you agree? Yes. And you can't solve sustainability without focusing on agriculture. You also agree? Right? With 600 million Indians, with agriculture consuming a large chunk of India's water, somebody says 85%, 90%, etc., 45% of the land, etc. You know, agriculture is a perpetuator as well as a big victim of climate change, right? So we have to look at this topic of sustainability, and obviously AI is a big component of that, from an angle of food security, from an angle of income, and then environment, right? We've had some very good, interesting presentations for the last half an hour on AI and the potential, and you've seen some of the applications of AI in agriculture. So what I'm going to do with our extremely diverse and esteemed panel is to try and translate some of that into a few areas that we can all agree to work on as next steps. Because while the potential is there, I think there's a lot of work to be done, right? So for the next 40 minutes, and what I've done is I'm going to break this up into 3 sections. In the first section, I'm going to focus on how do we actually enhance collaboration and reduce competition, right? Between the players of the ecosystem. Number 2, in the second section, I'm going to focus on multidisciplinary skills that are needed to work on agriculture, right? We need domain skills, we need to focus on policy, we need to focus on AI, digital skills, etc. But how do we enhance all of them working together, and how do we bring them together, right? In the third section, I'm going to focus on data. You've heard all the 3 panelists, 3 keynote speakers and the presentations, as well as Rajiv Chawla in the keynote, talking about data and the work that is happening, right? So we're going to try and explore what needs to be done, because agriculture is one of the least digitized sectors, not only in India but around the world, right? And the data, particularly in India, tends to be uncalibrated, non-standardized, and therefore it is not trustworthy, right? So how do we change some of that? Because if AI has to succeed, data has to be made much more relevant, much more effective. So with that, let me, and I'm going to, with the panel's help, and my request to the panel is to keep the answers as short and succinct as you can. We have only limited time, and we have a lot of ground to cover. But I would also like to encourage each of the panelists to recommend 1 or 2 steps that we should take. I think we all understand the challenges, right? We also understand the solutions to some extent. But what is it that we can do in the next 6 months is the challenge in front of us. So can we therefore converge on some takeaways from here? So with that, Dr. Mohapatra, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good afternoon, and welcome, Dr. Mohapatra. Let me go to the first section, which is on cooperation. How do we define that, and how do we work on that? There was a panel, there was a task force that Confederation of Indian Industry had led, and that task force suggested that we should bring together private agri entities, engineering colleges, right, and agri-state universities together, and forge partnerships between the 3 to try and drive better outcomes. We do recognize that some efforts have happened for agri-universities to start teaching data science, right? But maybe more needs to be done. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and also a few recommendations as to what should we do going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what we are discussing is very, very significant in the context of Indian agriculture, in fact, global agriculture, and global sustainable agriculture, rather I'd say. Many things have been spoken, and there are also other panelists who would be throwing more light. Very specifically, what you asked with regard to partnership and building, trust and coming together on a single platform to deliver on the aspects which were presented. Certainly, data is important. Certainly, the information and implementation at the ground level is important. Very specifically, building this partnership requires, I think, a kind of program at the national level, maybe coordinated by Niti Aayog or even the Department of Agriculture Cooperation or even the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So this is first thing which is essential, because partnerships cannot be built in air, and it will be only a kind of theory. And during 6.5 years of my stay at Krishi Bhavan, I have seen, I have invited several times the startups, the industry, and many others. A lot of discussions happened, and what we built is a program on our own. After 4 years of deliberations, a lot of industry partners came in, and we have discussion. And but translating that into real partnership across sectors and private, public, and others, non-government organizations, did not really happen that successfully. So, but we could build a program to generate data, because that's very, very important. We don't have really good quality data as it was presented. We require that. So, coming back to the specific point of partnership, I say that there has to be a kind of leadership role played by organization at the helm, bringing different partners together under a single umbrella.
Okay.
The second point is that not only a leader is required, maybe under the umbrella of ICAR or Niti Aayog, whosoever. The second is that earmarking a specific investment for this. Unless we earmark, a budget and specific investment happens coming from private, public, or whatever, or public investment initiating the whole process, probably successful implementation of this partnership at the ground level would not really happen.
My question, Dr. Mohapatra, would be, can ICAR lead it?
Yes, very much.
So why not? Why Niti Aayog? Why can ICAR make it mandatory for the state agri universities to forge a partnership, and they can take the lead?
So
would you agree?
I can tell you that this is what is very, very important. Recognizing this, kind of technology strength of ICAR,
right,
and it's and spread all across in all agroclimatic zones where data is being generated at the ground level. In fact, ICAR would be best positioned to really take the leadership role. And bring partners together to do the need.
Thank you, Dr. Mohapatra. We'll come back to you for the couple of other areas. But Dr. Marwaha, if I can go to you. And you have done a lot of work on soil ontology, on soil data sets, etc. And so have a lot of startups, right? And I can clearly think of Bharat Agri, which has also worked on soil. How do we enhance collaboration between ICAR and your institutes and other institutes and the private startups? Give us a couple of recommendations that you think we should do.
Thank you. So first of all, we see that the agri startups which are there right now, we can see in India, a lot of agri startups are there. We do interact with them in different platforms. We have many incubation centers at IRI, at NAM, at other state agriculture universities. And while interacting with them, we found that most of them are not from agriculture backgrounds. They are either CEOs of those organizations are either IIMs pass out or IITs, or they have come, they are successful businessmen in different industries, and then they have come to agriculture. While I was saying that, because they lack the basic domain knowledge in certain of those things. And whatever is available in public forums, on our websites, on our databases, many things are not known to them. We have a technology database where all ICR technologies which are required to be, which are actually ready for commercializations are available. And those are very potential things which any startup can take, and they need not invest on the research part even. The research is done, but those information is available.
Right. The challenge is sometimes they don't even aware that that data set exists.
So going through all these data sets which are available, and we do run these incubation centers where we guide, we teach, and we inform all startups, whosoever approaches us, to do these type of basic survey and provide all the information. Second, which you say, is the data actually. So how we provide certain data which can be provided in a public forum, right? So that data which we can share, that we are ready to share, rather. Those are available on the websites. So we publish agriculture data book, many things are available through that. So sometimes those information which is available still are not being used by the agri-entrepreneurs.
So what should we do? I mean, what do you suggest as the next step that we can, as a country, adopt?
So that was all those steps which we should take actually are being taken, right? In terms of having incubation centers at agriculture universities or that. And the only thing which a company or startup should know, that yes, reach out to those incubation centers. And then they are, and in those incubation centers, not only the information is given, even the funding is given, grant is given at the ideation stage and even at the product stage to further scale it up. So many things are available, and all those are available through websites.
All right. I would submit that more needs to be done.
Right.
And I'm looking for maybe Dr. Mohapatra or from yourself a couple of actions that you should take, because many startups do not understand. And we have an example right here who have not been able to get that kind of feedback. Right, Sai? Do you want to comment on that very quickly?
Definitely, there are a lot of resources available, no denial to that. But access to those resources is difficult. And secondly, any startup who is working in data domain, just having data doesn't solve the problem. It has to be correctly labeled, standardized. Not knowing the accuracy of data, it is difficult to use that data. So in that case, then we end up generating our data, because then on our data, we can do right labeling, right standardization. Because at least for a startup who is data-centric, this particular data quality is very, very important. So we cannot build a model on data which is, yeah.
Thank you.
Nipun, one additional thought in this collaboration would be, yes, why can't we look at a sandbox? Because that's one thing. If you look at the cost that we are looking at in terms, anything with respect to data or AI, sandbox would be a need with the catalog. That might be a potentially an outcome or an action item that we can take.
I think a sandbox is a great idea to help innovators experiment with data, but we are talking about even more basic level information and an understanding of what exists out there. Right? And one suggestion that was coming up, and I don't know what does Dr. Mohapatra think about that if there's an agri-tech that is getting registered, I think there should be a compendium that is given to them that this is all the data sets that you have access to, these are the websites, these are the government resources, these are the publicly available resources, so that not a single startup should waste even one day in trying to duplicate effort or trying to hunt for information that they might not otherwise get, right? Dr. Mohapatra, any quick comment on that? If you do you agree with that, or?
No, I think it's not good to do with that.
Right.
First, all, if we build this partnership platform, and there is a mechanism for interaction, regular interfacing, and information flow,
right.
Mechanisms well built in the system, I believe that would work out very well. And so all the startups who are initiating their work, there has to be an interface with ICAR, with a wide network of institutions, depending on the interest of the startups and small companies coming in. I think that would help in a big way. So this, overarching partnership platform would be of great help.
Okay.
And also the second point is, it's not just making data available. One is the quality of the data that has to be ensured from the ICAR side, and also data, not only once goes to the hands of others, but data security at times, when you take the original data sets, and often, the scientists are not ready to share because of data security issues.
Yes.
So when it is shared, so that has to be also worked out very well, that, how do we share the benefits also, out of it.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
and not only sharing of data, Dr. Mahapatra and Dr. Marwaha, but also the information on what research are you working on, what are the activities that are going on, which an agri-tech could actually leverage. Maybe the projects that are ready to be commercialized that they should pick up and they should work on. But I'm going to end this section with only, Praveen, if I can request you for one quick comment on how do you, based on your international exposure, what do you think happens globally that India could adopt in terms of academic institutes furthering the ecosystem around agriculture?
Right. So actually what I have observed is that even in this is just from a personal experience from my interactions in Harvard and NSF, right? So when they actually look at this, they at early on itself involve the partners who would be involved, like farmers or user bases, right? So that's very important to bring at early stage. Who would the users be? And in this academic industry interaction is very important, right? Right at the early stage itself, bring the industry also, because from the industry we do have a lot of experience in using the data sets. So if we have a say also in, like I talked a little bit about AI assisted or AI augmented data collection, right? Like that's something simple also to be, which could be adopted, like run the data through the existing even baseline models, take the feedback and then look at whether you want to keep that data set, correct them, tag them, like even not only after collection, but even during at the time of collection itself, That's something that probably can be adopted as well, right?
Okay, so can you translate that into a recommendation, please?
Yeah, exactly what I was talking about. If we can actually have that at the time of collection itself.
Okay.
Because like very simply, like earlier we were discussing, right? Like if you want to, for example, have like farm boundary delineation very well, then there are algorithms which do very well. So rather than, you do that automatically, but then do the correction of it, so you don't have problems in farm digitization at least, right? So only where is necessary at the time of in the field, you correct them, right? So those are very simple mechanisms of bringing, in a way, augmentation, the way that you're collecting data set itself, right? Quality check at the time of data collection. These two things, if it is done well, I think it will solve 90% of the problem, in my opinion.
All right. Dr. Marwa, you were saying something.
Yeah, one approach is this. Another can be having, as Dr. Mahapatra told, a clear-cut program, specifically pointing out the issues, the domain areas, the low-hanging fruits for which we can solve the problems, those applications which are easy to build and which we think AI has a solution as of now. But it's just application of those applications on the right data set, get it model ready, and then apply it. So there are, if you see the domain itself and both the domains, the AI as well as the agriculture, you can find out many such problems where we have all the solutions, only a bit of correction of the data and applying right algorithm for the right problem that will serve the purpose and that will show you the impact of AI in agriculture domain.
Can you take an example of that, Sudeep? Example that ICAR has worked on, maybe yourself or Dr. Mahapatra, any one of you?
There are 2-3 examples.
Very
First, as Salman has covered, we have come up with a solution, AI DISC, artificial intelligence based disease identification system for crops. We did it for 50 diseases.
And
across 25
how widely
crops.
is it being used?
This is launched last year, last year in fact, and now we are integrating in NPSS itself for other things. For cotton is Vadwani AI is doing, but for all other crops and other diseases, we are building it with NPSS.
And you're commercializing it through the agri-tech startups as well?
That we can also do it. So essentially, we are giving it through an API, and we believe that we can provide it to any agriculture entrepreneur, whosoever have their own mobile app, but having different set. Like the earlier example we have said for the financial credits, right, agri credits. So although he is providing agri credits, but for every farmer, they can always add the crop and pest advisory to their apps. So that one section can be the crop and pest advisory, and others, the governments or the state governments or any other mobile app developer can add their own set of features, can do value addition. So this is one such problem. Another area where it's more scientific, where me and Dr. Mahapatra worked, is actually the crop improvement program, wherein we established phenomics facility, and wherein we have state-of-the-art complete camera system, data imaging stations, and we run through hundreds of genotypes to find out particular specific trait. And wherein from that we use AI algorithms to find out the high throughput phenotyping. And that we have used to actually filter out some of the traits for some of the genotypes, which will finally help in speedy crop improvement programs.
Sai, if I can come to you and Salman as well, both of you, which is what are the challenges that you are seeing on the ground in terms of the farmers using AI-based solutions? I mean, they could be from ICAR, they could be your solution, there could be others. Why don't you go first and then Salman after that?
So with respect to farmer, he doesn't understand between what is AI or what is digital. For him, it has to be something which is more appropriate, more real and more actionable for him. So the AI technologies which are based on more data sets and more accurate are able to give accurate advisory, more real time and more realistic to the ground. I think, and also other aspects like vernacular, something actionable. So any AI technology which is able to solve these problems, the farmers are able to use it. So farmer now here doesn't understand which AI model has been used in backend or what is the technology. For him, it's more of a relevance.
Yeah, I think plus one to what Sai said, just one point to that is what does farmer is having a fear of loss. So the AI need to look at solving or reducing risk with respect to, I mean, whatever development it is, whether it's solving a through crop advisory, any credit, it's all about risk, because for him it's the matter of income. So the AI solutions need to be well tested, piloted quick. So what AI is able to do right now is able to expedite the process of failure faster. So fail fast, redevelop it, prove it, and then take it to the farmer. Because trust is another important aspect to the farmer. If it is not working, farmer will lose trust. If it loses trust, then he will never use it.
I think, and as some of the panelists also said earlier, it has been a tech-led approach to some extent. And I think we need to convert that into a balanced approach between technology and domain. Right? So what has been the experience of the effort to get data sciences and digital technologies integrated into our agricultural universities? What do you, any feedback on that, anyone?
Yes, like I'll tell about my institution, IASRI. We were working on data science from last so many years, and we are continuously having a refresher course for the teachers and everything, so that the teachers of the agriculture universities become trained in their data science. They could use it in their research work. So this is one aspect. Another is we have time to time revising our curriculum. So just a couple of years back, we have revised our BSc and complete postgraduate.
Yours is a premium university. What about the 72 other universities?
It's for all. So ICAR being a nodal agency, so we implement the course curriculum revision across all 76 universities.
And you think we're making progress?
Yes.
So across
last year only 5th Dean's Committee report was there. Based on the NEP implementation, now the 6th Dean's Committee reports are there. So our process is not like other universities where single university revises their curriculum. So here in ICAR and SAU system, we have Dean's Committees for revising the curriculum, and all 76 universities follow the same. Only there is a difference of only 10 to 15% change which they can do based on the crop which they grow. Like Rajasthan, they will not grow the rice. The Kerala will. So there are some flexibilities given. Otherwise, the course curriculum of agriculture universities is same across India, not only for the graduate, but also for the postgraduate and PhD.
Okay.
So that is being taken care of.
Thank you. I'd like to come back to research, Dr. Mohapatra, and we're very proud of the work that you've been doing on genomics and molecular genetics, etc. What is your thoughts on how is AI actually helping accelerate some of that research capability in the country?
Yeah. In fact, it's a very big answer to this, but I'll be very brief.
And any recommendations as well, if you can make any quick recommendations as well.
That's more important. When I started discussing AI-based applications, in 2017, we had industry partners and ICAR and others who all were involved at that point in time. It was getting initiated. So we had a lot of discussion, one full day discussion on this, and we built a recommendation. And now we have many programs, AI-driven programs, research programs, which are now in place. For instance, we are using, remote sensing-based near real-time crop condition monitoring, and building algorithms, new algorithms, and then redefining many different agroecologies, not just one location, one farmer, and different ecologies, and where it works, where it doesn't work. It was presented, and not that everywhere it works. And similarly, for instance, use of sensors and AI in rapid fertility assessment and mapping, soil fertility assessment and mapping. And the input system is so serious a constraint with regard to sustainability of agriculture, and water, fertilizer, and so on. I'll not go into details of it, but that's what we are researching with, and AI is being used. And similarly, not only crops. In fact, we have gone to the fishery and animal husbandry sector. In animal husbandry sector, precision dairy. With regard to health monitoring, mastitis, and estrus detection, detection of parturition time of cattle, and so on and so forth. And so, using AI and sensors, to build that kind of database, and then taking it to the field for application. So there are many such areas where the research is happening, and more so. As Dr. Marwa said, we started with use of phenomics. So, we built this facility, and real-time data, huge quantity of real-time data, and using AI to analyze and also apply for prediction of a good phenotype, and then good genotype identification in the process, and building that. And then now, given the kind of technology as it is moving, for instance, gene editing, identifying the right kind of gene and the right kind of site of mutation by using AI and models, different models, whatever available, and so that machine learning tools, so that we can pinpoint and reduce the work of researchers to modify genes at will to give better crops which are climate resilient and for sustainable agriculture, which is so crucial. So that kind of interventions are happening now. So I believe that in years to come, many technology will be coming from ICAR system, including ICAR means it includes all the 77 universities, who are intricately, in fact, associated with our research programs.
And is this, and are we also collaborating as a country with international institutions? What about the private sector? Are there any recommendations on that?
Yeah. So I'll come to recommendation part of this, that I think, we are interacting with international institutions, which are called CGIAR institutions. In fact, we, ICR fund them. In fact, around 50 crore rupees annually is spent on this partnership. We fund very specific research programs and partner in that and get all the international, expertise and experience and also technologies, to the country. And that is how Indian agriculture is contributing to food self-sufficiency and sustaining this 1.4 billion people. But anyway, but coming to very specific recommendation on this, that I believe that the industry partnership has to happen large scale in this program. I think there is a little bit of isolation, industry, particularly the startups and the youngsters, they are coming into this field, and data is being generated afresh. And I believe the kind of expertise, experience available with the university system and ICAR system, there should be complementarity, and there will be faster progress. And this has to happen at a faster pace.
Who should take the lead, sir?
I invited several times and we had interactions, but it has not jailed. I believe that a little bit of investment would spur this activity and jail happen, faster. So without that, probably, that would not really be materializing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Keeping a watch on the clock, I'm going to move to the third section, and I'm going to talk about data and issues around data, right? Data interoperability, sharing of data, because that ultimately is the raw material for AI. And what are the problems? The problem number one is that agriculture is one of the least digitized sectors. There isn't enough of data sharing that happens between the private sector and the public sector. And a lot of the data that exists or that is available in silos in the different formats and different types of data, etc. So that leads to a whole range of issues where we do not have enough data to work on some of our AI models. So we certainly need governance, as that was pointed out by some of the keynote speakers as well. We need to find ways to exchange data, to use technology like a data exchange, etc. But I'd like to get your thoughts on if you can frame that whole issue around data standardization, lack of calibration, etc., please.
Thanks, Nipun. So this is what I was thinking, because everybody started off with the data quality, but the real reason for why we don't have a data quality and why there is a skepticism in sharing all this. So first part is, I believe agri is a very diverse and a complex ecosystem. And without a standardization, it is very, very difficult, because you're measuring the same parameter in Tamil Nadu and in Bihar, but is represented in a different way. So when you collect data, it needs to be standardized, because across nomenclature, across matrices that you're collecting, the units that you're defining, all these are at different scales, right? So when you converge all this, even though you have a quality, the perception will be you don't have a quality. So how do you bring it to a general approach is a key thing. So probably taking an analogy from telecom, the reason why it has been so strong and standing is it is built on standards, protocols, and everything is documented. So everybody who is coming into the ecosystem follow the same thing. So that's a want of the hour for agriculture, right?
Yeah.
Because if we have compute, we have memory, we have skills, and we also have data protection. The biggest thing that is lacking is standardization, and that's the need of the hour.
Okay.
So the second part that I wanted to talk about is on the reason why people are a little skeptical in sharing, because people say data is important, my model is important. So with so much of advent, there are confidential compute rooms, there are data exchanges, where while you protect the farmers, you also protect the data providers. So that will bring a lot of collaboration is the next thing that we want to focus on, Nipun.
So protect the data providers.
Yes,
Okay.
because standardization and protection to multiple means. The third part is why somebody is not sharing a data. It's awareness. 10 years back, you and me were worried about sharing our data for a credit score. Today, all of us are open. Why? Because we have seen the benefit of it. So how do you make the ecosystem be aware of why am I sharing the data? What is the benefit in it for me? Which can also be driven by short-term use cases like financial inclusion, right? Which will lead to showcasing immediate results, building trust, and people see the benefits.
Perfect, very good. So help people realize the benefits that they can get, number one. Number two, protect the data providers as well, not just the farmers, but also the people who are actually collecting data. And the third, you said, is standardization. And standardization, I'm assuming you're talking about not only what you collect, but how you collect it. So the process of collecting information.
It includes process,
right.
The approach that we collect, how do we want to calibrate it, all this also matters.
Perfect. Sai, you've been a data company, so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So I think Abhay is very right that that process is not yet set. So for example, if today I have to share data, I'll have to start that process from taking consent from the users. Because data privacy is a big issue. I cannot just start as a private company, I cannot share data without consent. So that should be the step one, that while any private company or government organization is collecting the farmer-specific data, there has to be consent and those things, regulatory things sorted. Second is confidentiality can be managed by slicing that data to macro and micro level by masking it. So let's say if data accuracy is needed at the block level, village level, it can be masked so that it can be used readily rather than waiting for a consent. So that way, immediate access of data can be also solved without waiting for the individual farmer consent.
So that would enable data providers to actually share data. That would enable you to share data with somebody else, other private sector players.
I wanted to add something also to this. I think one of the key element is what kind of value we put to the data. You know? Now somebody might say that I go and collect data from the field, it might cost me 50 rupees. You know? But the actual value of collection and data correction and validation, all of that is almost at least 10 times that. You know?
Okay.
So data providers, I mean data collectors, if you incentivize that, then sharing also becomes much more easier because the value for, I would say that, current AI systems, knowing AI systems very well, curated data, good quality data, have much more higher significance than like large amount of data. So data diversity and smaller amount of data is critical. So if we, even for that smaller curated data, if we are able to give higher valuation, then, I think like data will become ubiquitous, and for selected crops, selected varieties, it doesn't have to be a huge amount, right? So already we have invested a lot of revenue. I think the major issue has been in focusing on the curation and quality and the valuation of it. If we just increase that, by a factor of 10 or at least a factor of 10 times, you know, the amount and quality of data that we're going to get is really beautiful. You know?
Okay.
That's first thing. One more additional point I want to add is, looking at the future also, we have to look a little bit at about the future of AI as well. The future of AI is not going to be data-driven alone, you know. It's also knowledge-driven, you know. Indian agriculture system is a humongous powerhouse of knowledge, you know. But how do we codify that, structure it, and like, you know, bring it in a centralized, representative way, you know, call it knowledge graphs or anything, is very, very critical. Because the relationship between crops, pests and diseases, soil, and it's all interconnected, right? So that interconnection, so if we add the knowledge layer to it, you know, even data uncertainty, the uncertainty around data goes away.
Right, I agree with that. Who do you think should lead it?
That's a great question. But I think it should be.
Are you suggesting that the government leads it, ICAR leads it, or the private sector leads it, or an ecosystem approach leads it?
Well, there should be a centralized representative, but it can be like even private players like us, like Wikipedia, right? Like we were discussing, Wikipedia, like how Wikipedia is like really crowd-driven. Right. I'm ready to contribute, you know, but I cannot.
You're willing to contribute, okay. Sai, what do you think, given your work that you've done on collecting data sets, etc., what has been your estimates of the cost that has been incurred by you? I mean, if you can just take some rough estimates.
Actually, cost is pretty high because for us, that data accuracy was the key in building those models. So for 4 years, we conducted multiple experiments with ICRISAT. So we worked with ICRISAT for 4 years. So 20 scientists working for 4 years, conducting at least 100 what do you call central control plots. So
can you convert that into one number, or can you convert that into something? Take away?
Yeah, so it is somewhere between $2 to $3 million.
Wow! So that is the cost that you incurred in collecting one data set. Right? Now
these
imagine
were multiple.
Okay, fine.
4 data sets.
4 data sets. Okay, but imagine if there are other startups also replicating and trying to do the same thing, that they are incurring a similar cost in doing this, exactly replicating the same data set.
It's also the time, because agriculture,
I
it's
agree.
a season.
I agree. There was an estimation that 70% of Indian agri-tech players actually spend 70% of the cost and effort, etc., in duplicated effort. So that's an example of what you're giving.
And like I know from my peers, they do the same.
They do the same thing, right? So the discussion that we were having, Dr. Marwa, on data and sharing and ICAR, etc., and making that available, not just ICAR data, but also the government of India data, etc.
So what Dr. Mohapatra told in a way that a platform. So agriculture-based shared data platform where both private and public data can be present there. May not be free, may be priced, but the platform should be there where everyone can start contributing the data sets.
I agree.
And then it may be a marketplace also.
I agree.
So
we should have a national...
At least available. So if somebody wants to get that data, and if you say by himself he incurs such a cost, and if that data is available in a lesser cost, yes, I should go about it. So a collaborative data platform, and sir also told about the funding, and I believe we should recommend that some big player should contribute as a CSR funds for giving a seed money for developing that.
If you look at the amount of money which we as a country are spending by individual players spending a few $1 million each, there is enough money available.
Right, that's what I'm
saying. If you can channelize that to a common effort.
So only those companies can contribute, only the CSR part of their, that will also do.
Fine, all right, okay, cool. I think, Sanjay, any points from your side on this?
ICR has a clear-cut policy on a CSR.
Sure,
they can fund ICR for CSR for developing this platform.
Wonderful, wonderul. I know we are out of time almost, but Sanjay, any quick
No, I think
we're
touching on the right piece. The fodder for all this is, if I use that term, is data. And I think there are a lot of other industries that have gone through similar challenges over the last couple of decades. My background's financial services. So if I look at banking in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, and how it's progressed, we didn't have standardization, which is where This started happening at the global level with the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision. We had different accounting standards, which is where International Accounting Standards Board came around, IASB. I think this is a movement which is done, if you look at it broadly, probably at a global scale. And that, in a way, starts filtering down. So even if you look at accounting standards, I'm just using that as an example, it started getting defined and evolving at a global level, but there was a pace at which each country followed, including India. India decided that certain standards will be adopted with a lag, and as did many other countries. And I think ultimately that's what we will need. Now, if there's no global forum that's ready to do that, we can definitely take the initiative at a country level. But I do find that while there's a lot of willingness from academia, from private sector, etc., a government leadership and initiatives like this gives it a lot more continuity.
Sure, absolutely.
And also attracts, a lot of kind of, I would say, funding, interest, etc. And the independence of the government, in a way, starts, influencing some balanced approach rather than commercial biases that might come in.
Yes, I agree with that. The government has a huge responsibility from an agriculture standpoint as well. And so agriculture cannot really make progress without government support. But I think we can all conclude, and there were some very good ideas and actions that came out of the session, and we'll summarize it, and we'll work with GPAI to take it forward. But we can all conclude that I think collaboration is the only way, and an ecosystem-led approach is the only way to go forward, number one. Number two, try to build data sets and infrastructure, digital public infrastructure in a collaborative manner between the private sector and the government, etc., is the other thing that we should focus on. Every private sector company building their own infrastructure is a waste of money, is a waste of time. We are just not able to solve agricultural issues fast enough, right? So wonderful, thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Excuse me, can I one point?
Yes, Dr. Mahapatra. There are a couple of questions from the audience. Just 1 second. Let him just finish. Go ahead, Dr. Mahapatra.
Yeah, so I was telling that it's fine that what we are discussing is important, and while discussing, it is also, every one of us knows that this country is having 85% of its about 12 crore farm household that is small and marginal.
Yes.
And with less than 1 hectare of land, and that's also fragmented. And anything we would like to implement, because farmers cannot afford, and we have to keep in mind, and why our technology diffusion adoption is so slow, and why we have been struggling, that should be kept in mind. In a captured, clustered 2,000, 5,000, 50,000 hectare is not going to really work for the whole country. And how do we holistically address the issues of these huge farming community and 85% being small and marginal? So, and the cost of the technology and services and solutions being provided at the grassroots level. So this needs to be kept in mind. And what was said that the cost of collecting data itself, and there will be other costs associated. So I believe that keeping all that in mind, we need to build partnership and build that kind of platforms together so that we don't replicate. It's not just public-private partnership, even private-private partnership would be essential. So, and government intervention is also important, because providing solutions at a cheaper rate at the doorstep of the farmers is not going to happen so easily, unless we come together. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take a question from the audience.
Yeah, I represent academia, and that too from pure sciences. If we are talking about sustainable agriculture, the role of AI, what my emphasis is, it has to percolate down every layer. And that is where we can build a strong, sustainable agriculture in a country like India, where almost everybody gets impacted by agriculture directly or indirectly. So the topic of discussion, I think knowledge-based system is very, very important, and that is where Indian sustainability in agriculture has lagged behind, as pointed out by Professor Mahapatra. So only the knowledge is coming from the agricultural extension sector, where they have the data set, and people are not ready to believe it properly. So what I think the new education policy with which I am greatly associated with, so it has to start from bottom up. And the education system has to be told the problems of Indian agriculture and how sustainable it can become by the modern technologies, not like transgenics, which people are misunderstanding. There's a lot of misinformation. And that is why we have been lagging. So now there is a ride of genome editing. So we don't have to miss that wave, where the government also is very proactive and supportive.
We'll have to close, sir.
So that is one point. The other point that I want to make is...
Please ask a question.
Yeah. No, I'm just
making a point. Making a point, right. Sure, go ahead.
So the One Health policy, where agriculture is very much involved, because there are zoonotic spillovers from animals to human beings. The AMR, the antimicrobial resistance, where agriculture plays a central role. So all these spheres are very central to sustainable agriculture. So all these things have to be addressed through AI.
I agree.
There are lots of other things.
I agree. We'll, as we summarize it, we will put it out in the public domain, and we would love you to have it critiqued. Yes, go ahead, Shiva.
Graph databases.
Can we take that offline?
No, but there is somebody who's working on it. I thought I'll just share this. I'll just half a minute. ID Mumbai and ID Chennai, the Madras, they already have an initiative. Along with NVIDIA, they are working on it. I thought it's just information to share with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions, please take them offline. The panelists will still be here. There's tea and coffee outside, and there's something to eat. You can continue chatting. We just need to close the session.
Yeah, let me ask one question to Mahapatra,
sir. Please.
Youth needs to be, channelized for right livelihood. When AI comes into the exploration. So, what are your thoughts, sir?
Certainly, in fact, youth can be gainfully engaged. If AI comes in, we have many different applications where youth can be engaged meaningfully by appropriate skill impartment. It's a big thing to discuss about, but very briefly, youth needs to be skilled to help in the whole process of application of AI in agriculture. So there are many different aspects in which youth can be meaningfully engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for participating. And we will, as we said, we'll circulate the feedback.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I realize that you have all sat here for 2 hours, and I realize that, it's been a long day. So please continue chatting with them. Please ask your questions. There's no discouragement from our side. I would request, I would thank everyone for staying here, and I would thank especially all our panelists, moderators, and Dr. Trilochan Mohapatra and our keynote addresses. And I would now request Mr. Abhishek Agarwal, scientist at METI in the Emerging Technologies Division, to please felicitate the moderator and all the panelists. Thank you so much. So please come to the front one by one, and you'll be felicitated by Mr. Abhishek. Please take a picture. We have one more group photo after felicitation. So everyone, if everyone can please just stand in front. Thank you once again, everyone. If you have any more questions, please ask the panelists themselves.